So after working at Mendel's for the last 4 years, I have heard so many customers ask how to print on fabric, how to do stencils, how to do block printing. So I thought I'd do a quick tutorial today on how to print with both of those methods. You can do it on fabric or paper, and the first thing we're going to talk about is stenciling. So what you'll need for this is an X-Acto knife. This is a basic craft tool. You can find it at Mendel's for $3.99, or really any office supply store will carry something like this. The next thing you'll need is a foam sheet. These are 79 cents a piece. You can really use whatever you want for stenciling. Manila envelopes, acetate, thick cardstock. I prefer this just because it's really fun to cut into. You can rinse it off and reuse it, and it wears really well. You'll also need spray paint. This is a water-based spray paint that we just started carrying at Mendel's. It's low odor. I really like the effect of it. The colors are really brilliant. And they retail for about $11. And then you'll also need something to print on. I have just a regular canvas tote bag right here. We sell these for $3.99 at Mendel's. You can make your own tote bag, or print on just canvas and make a patch. You can print on paper and make cards. Really, the possibilities are endless. And then I've also covered my workspace with just a trash bag so that I don't get paint on anything. You'll also need some sort of light colored pencil to mark on the surface, and a cutting board to put your item on so that you don't cut into your table. So the first thing you're wanting to do is draw your image. This is just an image I got off the internet, and I'm going to just color in the parts I'm going to cut out, because it'll help me keep straight what parts I want to remove and what parts I want to keep. And with this material, as long as you push down hard, you can really get an indentation, even if you don't have a light colored pencil. And then you're just going to remove the parts that you don't want. The trickiest thing about learning how to stencil is thinking in terms of negative space, and there are plenty of tutorials online for learning stenciling techniques. I'm not going to go in depth with that really today. If you're just starting out, I say the best thing to do is print an image off the internet and just trace it. And then eventually, after practicing, you'll start to think about things in terms of negative space and be able to make your own. We also sell some really great beginner stenciling books at Mendel's if you want to come in and check those out. And of course, there are endless resources on YouTube or in the library. So in the interest of you not having to sit here and watch me cut out all these little pieces, I went ahead and cut out one where this is completely done. And as you can see, I've already used it once to test it out, and it worked beautifully. So what you're going to do is take the surface that you're printing on and lay it out flat. If it's something like canvas, you might want to iron it just to make sure that it's straight. It'll print better that way. And then I would recommend taping down your stencil just to make sure that it stays in place. And once you've got everything taped down, you want to make sure you shake your spray paint really well. Get it good and mixed up, and then do a fine, even coat over the whole thing, being careful not to get it off of the stencil itself. Once you've got your whole surface covered, then you just want to carefully remove the stencil. And there you go. A cute little custom printed bag. These make great gifts for people, and they're super easy to do, and you can reuse them over and over. Now we're going to talk about block printing. This is a little bit more difficult, but super, super fun. It's one of my favorite new mediums. Well, new to me at least. So the things you're going to need for this are linoleum block. These come in several different weights. This one's a harder one, which I prefer because you can get a lot of detail in them. They retail for about $4 and they come in all different sizes. But you can also get really soft textured ones that feel more like an eraser. They're a lot easier to cut into, but a little bit more difficult to get all the detail that I like to have in mine. The next thing you're going to need is a linoleum cutting tool. These are specifically made for cutting into linoleum. And they're really cool because they come with a whole bunch of different tips. You unscrew the bottom, and then all the other tips fit right inside there. And they're really easy to change out and replace. You just unscrew the top, and it pulls out, and you can stick whatever tip you need for, whatever cut you're trying to make at the time. I, however, use wood cutting tools generally whenever I'm doing linoleum cutting. Mostly just because the handle on these are so big and I have really tiny hands. We also sell the wood carving tools at Mendel's. They're about $5 for a really large set of wood carving tools, and these are great because you can sharpen them also. They come with a lot of different tips. I tend to use about the same four about every time I do this, but it's nice to have the options. And you can also use them with wood. The next thing you're going to need is a brayer. This is for rolling the paint out. If you don't have a brayer and you don't want to spend the money on one, you can use just a regular foam paint roller, but I like the brayer. And then you'll need a burnishing tool. They sell specific things for burnishing that are like a round object with a handle, but a wooden spoon works just as well, and generally speaking, you'll have one of those in your kitchen. So you'll also need a piece of glass or plexiglass or some kind of paint tray. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, it's just something you can roll your paint out on. And then you'll need some sort of paint or ink. This is Versatex screen printing ink. I use this because it's perfect for printing on fabric. It won't wash out, but Speedball makes a special block printing ink that works really well if you're going to print on paper, and they just started making a fabric printing ink also, which I haven't tried, but I hear it's great. And these retail for about $4.99 a piece, so they're also inexpensive. It's a big jar of paint that'll last you through a lot of printing. So the first thing you want to do is make sure your surface is clean and draw your image onto the surface with a pencil. I'm going to do a little kitty face. It's just a really simple design, but and this is another thing where you need to think about things in terms of negative and positive space, and it really just takes some practice. I like to do the same thing here that I do with the stenciling, where I black out the part I'm going to remove. So here's the little kitty face that I'm going to cut out. And the first tool I like to use is a flat-bladed knife, so that I can just go in and kind of outline the cuts I'm going to make, so that I don't, slip and cut out pieces that I don't mean to. That's the frustrating thing about this when you're first starting out is, sometimes you'll miss and remove a piece you don't intend to remove. And usually you can improvise and, make it cute anyway, but it just takes a little bit of practice. And one thing I recommend is if you've got a hot plate or something, you could heat these up and make them a little bit warm, then they're easier to cut into. This next tool that I'm using is a scoop tool that you can just use to scoop out the excess pieces that you don't want. With the wood carving set, these come in several different sizes. This is the smallest one for doing more detail work, and there's a thicker one that you can use if you're trying to remove a lot of surface at one time. Another fun trick that I've learned is if you don't have a hot plate, you can work on 2 at a time and sit on one while you're working on one, and then switch them out whenever it gets cold. Your body heat will make it so that it's a little bit softer and a little bit easier to carve into with the knife. So these are some completed ones that I've done. They're spices, rosemary, sage and thyme, garlic, rosemary and thyme, that I made for printing on kitchen towels. And as you can see, I've already used them to print, and there's still paint on them. And here's the fabric that's made specifically for kitchen towels. You can find this at a lot of fabric stores. It's inexpensive and it makes great gifts. So when I first started doing this, I was thinking about it in terms of like how you would use a rubber stamp, but that's not at all how you want to do it, which is why I wanted to do a tutorial on how to block print. So you want to spread your paint out on your surface. Be generous with the amount of paint you use so that you'll have a nice detailed print. And then you're going to cover your brayer in paint and get it nice and covered. And then you want to roll that onto the linoleum block. Make sure that you wipe off any excess paint, because you will get it on the other parts, but you don't want that to show up on your fabric. And you're going to put your fabric on top of the block. And this is what first confused me, because you don't want to use it like a stamp and press down on it. So now you want to rub your spoon across and be sure to apply a lot of pressure, because that's going to make sure that your print turns out really detailed. And there you go, a nice clean print. And as you can see, we got all of the detail in there. And this just takes some practice, but it's a really great thing to learn how to do. These come in all different sizes. You can get little ones that are the size of business cards. I've made my own business cards with one of the smaller linoleum blocks. I've also made clothing tags for my garments. It's just great because you can custom print your own stuff. They're great for making cards, really whatever, band patches. So I'm just repeating the same thing over and over again. I'm going to print all 3 of these on this block and then sew it up so it's a kitchen towel. And some people choose not to remove all the paint just because they like the messy kind of raw effect of it. It's totally just, personal preference. I like mine to be nice and clean, personally. Make sure you rub nice and hard with that spoon. Or your burnishing tool if you choose to buy one of those. Alright, there you go. There's the little printed towel. This is going to be a gift for my dad. I hope this has been informative and that you try it out and you have as much fun with these printing methods as I have.